Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tauros All Access. I'm Evan Epstein alongside Coby Brault. For the second straight weekend, the Tauros split with the Austin Bruins, this time here at the Pepsi rink. Tauros suffered a 5-2 loss on Friday, despite the fact that they took a 2-1 lead well into the third period, and then a big penalty against Hubert Clark changed the complexion of that game.
Yeah, tough one Friday night. It was rocking in here early. We had a feeling it was going to be a big weekend attendance-wise, and Tauros fans definitely came through. But, yeah, I mean, the weekend as a whole, we'll get to Game 2 in a second here. But that Game 1, very promising for the Tauros, especially coming off of that 5-0 loss last Saturday in Austin. Like you said, had the 2-1 lead late in the third, but Hubert Clark gets ejected for a head contact, a 5 in a game for a head contact, which, you know, if you slow it down, looked a little bit on the borderline, but that's the tough thing, right? In real time, I mean, Lorenzo's helmet goes flying. It looks like a pretty massive hit. Crowd reacts as such, and the Bruins react as such, taking a run at Clark. So, tough one, especially with 5 minutes left in the game to get the 5 with the game, because then the Tauros finish up on the penalty kill for the remainder of the game, which is where Austin cashed in time and time again.
Yeah, Austin tying the game up 4-on-4, and then once they went up a man, because Paddington was in the box for 2 minutes for chasing down Hubert Clark, they continued to tack on goals. One of them shouldn't have counted, but they were already up 3-2 at that point, and like you said, being up a man for pretty much the rest of the way, it was probably over at that point nonetheless. It was a very physical series this weekend, and I think that was a bit of the frustration with the Clark ejection. Wasn't necessarily that he should or shouldn't have been ejected. Like you said, it's a borderline call, but with how physical Austin was and maybe the lack of calls against the Bruins, you see that go against Clark, and that created some frustration for the Tauros.
Yeah, tough. I mean, like you said, very physical series. You expect nothing less in a Bruins and Tauros series, especially when the 2-seed or the 3-seed is on the line as it was this weekend once again. And, you know, we saw it a little bit last weekend in Austin, but you look at that game last Saturday in Austin, and there really wasn't much. They got up early, and there really wasn't much in terms of big hits either way. Obviously, that Friday night, there was a scrap right off the opening faceoff. So definitely a physical series for, you know, both weekends. Tough call. Obviously, league reviewed it and upheld it, causing Clark to miss the game on Saturday. But so, you know, in their opinion, it was worthy of the 5 in the game. So, like we said, tough there in that situation, 5 minutes left, especially with how the game had been called. But, you know, using the letter of the law probably was worthy of it, and the league felt that way. So Clark out for Saturday, but didn't end up mattering on Saturday.
Yeah, the Tauros responded very well on Saturday. One thing we've talked about on Tauros All Access and on the pregame show is setting the tone early, and the Tauros did just that, jumping out to an early 2-0 lead. Spencer, the first goal, and Dane Ramirez right off the faceoff with the second. Bruins had a response, but the Tauros take a 2-goal lead to the first intermission thanks to Jack O'Hannison's power play goal.
Yeah, and that's a thing when you play the Austin Bruins. They play the same way as they always have under Steve Howard. There's going to be a lot of hooking, a lot of holding, a lot of grabbing, a lot of extracurriculars after the whistle. Very physical team. And, you know, when it works for them like it did on Friday, like it did last weekend, it looks really good. But when you when you get called on a few, the frustration starts to boil over on their side, and it was kind of a tale of two games. They end up committing 10 infractions. Tauros go 1 for 7 on the power play on Saturday. So definitely something that, you know, it's their brand of hockey, but when a game's called tight, can definitely get them in trouble.
And you mentioned the Tauros going 1 for 7 on the power play, but I think that stat understates how good the Tauros were on the man advantage on Saturday. They continued to create a lot of good looks. Give credit to Carl Axelson in goal. When they were down a man, he came up big pretty often, but the puck movement was great for the Tauros. And you consider Saturday's game, out of the past 4 against the Bruins, that was the lone game that the Tauros outshot the Bruins 42-32, and I think that really tells the tale of that game. The Tauros controlled the pace and the momentum.
Yeah, and you know, we talk about the disparity in shots there, 42-32. Tauros cash in 1 for 7, like we just mentioned. Bruins only going 0 for 1. So Tauros only go to the PK one time in that game. Another big reason why they ended up out shooting them. Another big reason why they ended up getting the win. The Bruins are always going to try to get under your skin. They're always going to try to get you to retaliate. Tauros do a great job on the discipline side of things on Saturday and come out with the 2 points. 4 games with the Bruins, split them 2-2, split the season series 4-4, and end up pretty much controlling our own destiny as we look at the playoff picture, which we'll get to in a little bit.
No doubt. We talk about the physicality of the series as well as Dane Ramirez's goal. He had a great weekend alongside Davin Nichols. Those are two of the most physical players on the Toros when you get into that type of game, and they created a lot of chances. I talked to Dane Ramirez after practice this morning to get his thoughts on the series. I'm here with Dane Ramirez. Dane, given the physical nature of the series against the Bruins, how do you respond to that style of play?
I think just the intensity that we had on Saturday just kind of powered through what they were all about. So I think if we just play that style of game, then we'll be good.
You scored directly off the faceoff on Saturday. How was that play drawn up, and how did you execute?
Yeah, it was a shot faceoff play. It was a good win by Jack, and I just tried to get the shot off as fast as I could, and it happened to go in.
Given the high likelihood the Toros play the Bruins in the first round of the playoffs, what's something you learned from the Bruins this past weekend that can help moving into the postseason?
I think we know that if we just stick to our game and play like how we play on Saturday, like any team's going to have a hard time beating us. So just learning that we just got to keep competing in that way, how we did on Saturday and not Friday, in the future coming to the playoffs.
All right, thanks, Dane.
Yep, thank you.
Ramirez said it well there. If the Toros play like they did on Saturday, they are going to be hard to beat once we move into the postseason. As well as Ramirez, a few other players having great weekends for the Toros. Adam Mahler, Jack O'Hanneson, and Ian Spencer, the Liberty Tax 3 stars of the week.
Yeah, and whenever you think about Adam Mahler, no matter what, think about his offensive game, it always starts obviously on defense. Probably the most physical guy on defense that the Toros have, and did a great job all weekend really walling off the Bruins and kind of not letting them get to the spots that they wanted to get to, which they got to quite a bit last weekend. So great adjustment from Mahler. O'Hanneson, huge goal, which we'll get to in a second. And Spence, you look at Ian Spencer, 70 points on the year, just one shy of Hunter Longy's single-season record for points in a season by a Toro. He's got 4 games to get 2 points. But, you know, Ian Spencer on a record pace here with 4 games left, getting it done, 2 goals on Saturday after not scoring for 6 games there. Had 2 assists in that span, but hadn't scored in a little bit there. So nice to see him get on the board early in that game and then the empty netter there at the end.
Without a doubt, and you mentioned record watch, O'Hanneson as well as Jesse Ahala both have 64 points. So they're a little bit farther away, 7 off that 71 mark with just 4 games to go. Certainly not impossible, but it looks like Ian Spencer, the front runner to take down that record. You mentioned Jack O'Hanneson's goal. That did turn out to be the goal of the week. Gave the Toros a 3-1 lead with just under 2 minutes to go in the first period on Saturday. Over to Yahala, backdoor O'Hanneson, up top Adam Mahler, back O'Hanneson, shot, score! Toros go up 3-1.
O'Hanneson becomes the 3rd player to score tonight. Toros getting goals from all the big names, big-time players making big-time plays in perhaps the biggest game of the season so far.
A huge goal there from Jack O'Hanneson, catching Axelson out of position. Now,
I like to move it.
Toros able to keep the Austin Bruins off the board for the final 40 minutes of that game. Ian Spencer's empty netter gives the Toros that 4-1 victory. And after 2 back-to-back splits against the Austin Bruins, well, the Toros and the Bruins are in the same spot as they were 2 weeks ago, tied at 81 points. Toros with the tiebreaker as they sit in second place.
Yep, and that's the biggest thing right there. You look at the schedules, the last 4 games. Obviously, Toros much harder of a draw than the Austin Bruins. Bruins with a home-and-home with North Iowa this weekend, home-and-home with the Minnesota Mallards to end the regular season. Toros obviously got to go down to the Odie Ice Center this weekend down in Aberdeen, and then get the hated Bismarck Bobcats for a home-and-home to end the season. So still a lot to sort out. Still a lot to sort out in that 4 spot, too, as you look at the standings. Wings 4 clear of the St. Cloud Norsemen right now. I'll tell you what, a sweep of the Aberdeen Wings would go a long way for the Toros, but also for the St. Cloud Norsemen. Norsemen finally get to play someone other than the Bismarck Bobcats. It seems like they have been playing them all the time lately. So definitely still a lot to figure out there. Going to be a tough one. Tough 2 games down in Aberdeen as the Wings season. They're looking good right now, but a sweep, things to be looking a lot different come Saturday night.
The other thing to consider there, once you move past that Aberdeen series as the Toros play Bismarck, Bismarck may have locked up the 1 spot by that point because the Bruins and Toros have been chipping points away from each other.
Yep.
The Bobcats now just need 1 win against the Minnesota Mallards this weekend, and that's a Mallards team that has lost
17 in a row.
17 in a row. Thank you, Coby. So that looks very likely that the Bobcats clinch that 1 spot, which would lock in the Austin Bruins and the Toros for that round 1 matchup. You think if you beat the Wings then, maybe the Bobcats don't have as much to play for that final series. 4 in a row to finish up the season is definitely a possibility for the Toros, but they may need 4 in a row to get home ice against the Bruins.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing. You look at the Bruins, obviously the North Iowa Bulls, very, very pesky this year. They've taken 2 up here at the Pepsi rink this season, so definitely not out of their own possibility that they can split with the Bruins, but that's kind of your best chance. Bruins finish the year, like we said, with a home and home with the Mallards, who have lost 17 in a row. Stranger things have happened, but obviously Bruins with everything to play for. Mallards and Bulls both eliminated from playoff contention, so a little bit less to play for on their end, but you know, some teams like to get up and play spoiler, so hopefully North Iowa can do that. You think realistically, Toros got to win out to, I mean, if they win out, they secure it no matter what, having the tiebreaker. But even 3 out of 4, you may be able to get there, depending on what happens with that North Iowa-Austin series this weekend.
And that's why this is the most fun time of the year. We get to run down all the different playoff scenarios. But what it boils down to is the Toros are going to play the Bruins 99% of these scenarios. I mean, the Bobcats would have to get swept by the Mallards for that not to be the case. And that will be an electrifying series, no matter who has home ice, really. But home ice is going to be a big advantage in that series.
Yeah, and you look at it, it's shaping up. This will be the 3rd year in a row. That first round, the Toros faced the Bruins 2 seasons ago. Bruins had the 1 seed, had that unreal team that ended up making it all the way to the Robertson Cup championship game, falling to Oklahoma. Last year, Toros go on that historic run, secure the 1 seed, end up sweeping the Bruins. So last two seasons they faced each other. Last 2 seasons have resulted in a sweep to the higher seed. Both those series, though, 1 versus 4. This will be 2 versus 3. So really anything goes. Obviously, of course, we want home ice because we have the best fan base in the North American Hockey League. So that would make things a lot easier, getting those first 2 in front of our rowdy fan base. But even on the road, the Toros have found a lot of success on the road this year. So either way you slice it, it's going to be, if it's anything like these last 2 weekends were, it's going to be some very intense, very fun hockey to watch.
It'll make for a good last couple weekends of the series. That'll do it for us here on Tauros All Access. As always, that QR code to the left of Coby. Scan that code. It'll take you to the Toros link tree. You can buy tickets for the next Toros home game, which is April 11th against the Bismarck Bobcats, the last home game of the regular season as the Toros head to Aberdeen this weekend to take on the Wings. And with that, we'll see you tomorrow on Tauros All Access.